What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Sports 360. I'm Jeff Fennell, and I'm here with my man, my partner in crime, Rob Duran of Rob Duran Sports. Rob, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well. I am doing well. I got some. I got big news, bro. I got
Oh,
big news. Yeah, my appeal was successful.
oh,
So yeah, so I'm off the pickleball court and I'm now eligible to make picks in the NFL again after my 0 for 2 showing in the championship round. So
there we go.
um
Congratulations, man.
yeah, thanks, man. Thanks. But I tell you what, brother was hot when it came to picking pickleball games, man. I started to realize, all you had to do was like look at these, these pickleball. Because pickleball, man, do you know pickleball is the
Not at
fastest
all.
growing sport
I,
in the
I
United States?
I know nothing about pickleball, man. You got
Oh
me there.
man, it's the no. In all seriousness, it's the fastest growing sport in the United States. Have you ever
Wow,
seen pickleball? It's on television too.
wow.
They have professional pickleball players. Yeah,
We may have to
it's
we may have to cover that.
we may. Listen, when I first moved into my new digs in here in Charlotte, I met a guy who he was retired, and first thing he asked me, "You retired?" I said, "Nope," and he said, and I said, "No." I said, "Why?" And he wanted to know if I could be part of the pickleball set, and I'm like, "Nah, Duke, I'm not ready for that." But, nah, pickleball, hey, don't sleep on pickleball because
Hey,
and there's a lot of younger people that play pickleball, but certainly there's a lot of older people that play because it's a smaller tennis court,
yeah.
and, you have rackets, and you have this hard plastic ball that's about the size of a softball, and so you don't have to run that much because it's a small court, and if you're playing double, you don't really have to run at all. So I think that's one of the reasons why older people play, but it's also younger people are playing it too, but it's taking the country by storm, man.
Well,
So,
let's listen. I tried to be a baseball player when I was younger. It didn't work out. I may have a future at now that you mentioned this.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you might be pickleball champion. Pickleball. I don't know why it's called that, but, but yeah, I listen, man, but when I was calling them pickleball games, man, you talk about what you were doing when you picked the, playoffs last year for MLB and how you got every series except one. Man, you couldn't touch me with my pickleball selections. So I'm ready for you. I'm coming for you, and it starts today with
Uh-oh.
our selection for the Super Bowl. So okay, so we have the Rams against the Bengals, and you picked both teams in the championship round. And you've been talking about Matthew Stafford, you've been talking about Joe Burrow, and these are your guys. It's going to be tough for you this time, man, because now you have to go with one of them. So I don't know what you're going to do, but we have to make our selections for the Super Bowl, which is coming up this Sunday. Um, have you done your homework?
Man. Yeah, I guess. I don't know, man. Can we just end
You
this
still
game in like
don't.
a tie?
You still don't have a pick.
Ooh, I have a pick. I have a pick,
Okay.
and it's
All right.
not easy.
Okay. Well, it seems like you're going to struggle with your pick. So, I'm look, first of all, I'm happy that we've had the 2 weeks for the Super Bowl. There's been a couple of times we've had 1 week in between, and I don't like that. It almost makes it seem like the Super Bowl is like any other regular season game or playoff game, and I think the 2-week run up is good, even though it's not the same as it used to be, because there's just more going on now,
Yeah.
you know, um, that takes up the sports calendar, and so you don't get a lot of that Super Bowl coverage as you used to. But I still think the 2 weeks is good. It gives both coaches and both teams a chance to really game plan and maybe even put in some new wrinkles, right? I think it's hard to put in a new wrinkle in a week, but over a
Yeah.
2-week period, you might be able to put in a wrinkle or 2 that might make a difference in the game. So, um, yeah, so I'm looking forward to it, man. Coming up this Sunday, and I know who I'm picking. I'm just gonna ask you though. You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I guess I'll go first, man. I'll go first.
Okay, all right. So for someone who has been riding Matthew Stafford, you said you told him from the beginning of the playoffs, don't commit turnovers, and he's been pretty good with that.
Yes.
And then on the other side with the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow has just been your guy from day one. And so this is a tough one for you. So who you got?
Well, for the second year in a row, there's a team with home field advantage here, and that's obviously the Rams. They're playing on their home turf. They have a crazy front line with Aaron Donald, obviously, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, a couple other guys who would just, it's advantage Rams when you go in the trenches because the Bengals O line don't have to keep repeating ourselves with that. They can't protect Joe Burrow at all. Somehow he continues to make plays, win games, get those passes off. But this is the best defensive front that he's had to face in these playoffs, including the Titans that got after him. I think they sacked him 9 times. So it's crazy to think that he's here at the Super Bowl after taking so many hits. So you would think advantage Rams in that case, with the home field advantage, the trenches, all that stuff. I think the big money matchup in this game is going to be Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey. I think that's going to be the matchup of the game. So it'll be great to see those two guys go at it. Uh, ooh. But I'll tell you this, Jeff. The Bengals defense also can't be ignored here. They stopped Patrick Mahomes in that second half. They stopped Derrick Henry in that Tennessee game, even though he was coming back from injury. He wasn't himself. But they did a great job, you know, making plays when they had to make plays and making stops when they needed to make stops. Both quarterbacks are playing probably their best ball of the season, especially Matthew Stafford, limiting the turnovers. I think just one interception these playoffs, thanks to me, of course. But listen, man, I think Joe Burrow's going to get it done. I'm going with my man Joe Cool to finish it off. And I think it's going to be a very close game. I don't think there's going to be some crazy comeback in this game. I don't have a score off the top of my head. If I did have to pick one, though, I'd go something like maybe 34-31 with the Cincinnati Bengals being Super Bowl champions and Joe Burrow the MVP.
Well, I agree with you. When you say that this is going to the front line play is going to be important. I agree with that. And I think Cincinnati actually did a pretty good job last time against Kansas City of protecting Joe Burrow. And sure, there was a couple of times the protection could have been viewed as breaking down, or maybe the coverage in the secondary was just good, and Joe had to
Yeah.
scramble, and he made some big plays, especially in the fourth quarter. to sustain drives and the rest of it. But I do think what the line of scrimmage is going to be really important. Um, Look, I'm not gonna bury the lead. I'm picking the Rams in this game, and um, I don't believe it's going to be any last second magic here. In fact, I don't even think it's going to be close.
Ooh,
I believe the Rams will win this game. I'm giving them, 37-16. I
wow.
don't think this is going to be close. I think that McVay, second time to the Super Bowl, um, he kind of got outfoxed by Belichick the last time and was laid bare a little bit in terms of the preparation for the team. I think he will probably have taken some lessons from that. Cincinnati is here for the very first time, and obviously their coach. When I say for the very first time, meaning this particular Cincinnati
Yeah.
team, not as a franchise. And so I think they have some things to do. But listen, I've been impressed by their coaching staff and what they've been able to do and how they played. You got to give them their due. Um, but I think it ends here, and I think the Rams are going to put it on them. Odell Beckham Jr. in that game against San Francisco really turned up, man.
Yes,
You
he
know what I
did.
mean? And then Cooper Cup is still doing his thing, and I believe if they have that kind of a 1-2 punch, that's tough, man. That's tough, and I think that'll help them get the running game going a little bit and make it even tougher. I think Ramsey's going to get a pick six. Put that in the book right now. Joe Burrow's
Mm.
going to try him, and he's going to take it to the house. Yeah, I'm looking for the Rams to, you know, I think our run of close NFL playoff games ends in the Super Bowl, and we get back to what we typically see in the Super Bowl, which is a blowout.
Yeah.
So, what I would say to you is enjoy the halftime entertainment, Eminem and Snoop Dogg, you know, Mary J. Blige, Dr. Dre, you know what I mean? Enjoy that.
That's gonna be a good halftime show, by the way.
It's probably
I'm
gonna
kind
be yeah,
I'm
I think
excited for
so.
that.
Me too. Me too. I'm looking forward to that too. But
A
I'm
lot
also
of a
looking
lot of
forward
the
to the game,
yeah,
but it's gonna be a blowout, Rob. I'm sorry, man. Joe Burrow's going down.
37-16. I wrote that down. Pick six, Jalen Ramsey.
Yep.
I'll make sure to write that down. All right.
and we and you can make sure we talk about it next week. I'm
We
bringing my
will.
pickleball skills. I'm bringing my pickleball skills to the gridiron, man.
Listen,
Don't sleep on me, man.
I'm scared of that Rams defensive line, man, because you can say all you want about Tennessee's guys, and the Chiefs, like you said, they did a pretty good job. The Bengals side did a pretty good job, but they haven't faced these guys. These guys are just different. Aaron Donald is different. If you double him, somebody else is coming. So oh, good luck. I just hope they
Yeah.
rebuild that old line for next year and really protect Joe.
Look, I don't
So
blame you for going with Cincinnati because Cincinnati has shown, I think, some remarkable resilience,
yeah,
because that the game against Tennessee with the 9 sacks, I mean, that was really that was a smash mouth game.
yeah,
And they prevailed in that. And the game against Kansas City, we talked about it. Kansas City came out in that first half and pretty much was having its way with Cincinnati. And they just hung in there and they continued to play and they were able to pull it out. And so I don't blame you for going with them, that they're resilient, but I think this is the Rams' time, and it's funny because this is the first time in the postseason I'm actually picking the Rams, so they need to be nervous, probably. because I picked the Cardinals to beat them. I picked Tampa Bay to
Mm,
beat them. I
yeah,
picked San Francisco to beat them, and now I'm picking the Rams. They need to be nervous.
man. Well, yeah,
We
they should be nervous.
so so you think Joe Burrow? I guess if you are selecting Cincinnati to win this, I would imagine Joe Burrow as the MVP.
I would go with that. Yeah, I think he would need to have a very big, great game. Like it can't be one of those where the defense wins the game, something like that. Like I think he needs to pass for 300 plus, maybe 350 plus, and really get the ball down the field. Jamar Chase, he may be locked up with Jalen Ramsey, but he needs to find his other weapons and get the ball on the field. I think the running game has to open that up for him. So Mixon has to find a way to create some type of yardage. Find some holes, find some space, and get down that way. The play action and all that stuff can open up the field and hopefully find Jamar Chase down the field and stuff like that. But he needs to have 300 or 350 plus, I think, to win this game, and I think he'll do it.
I think that Cincinnati, it wouldn't make sense for Cincinnati to move Jamar Chase around and
Yeah,
not to get him always locked in with Jalen Ramsey. Like even if they have to sometimes put him in the slot, but I think you know they need to have some variety in the way that they use him and where they line him up. If they just put him outside and he's with Ramsey all day long, I don't think that's a good formula for
not
them.
not at all. Yeah, I agree. They definitely have to. They have to move him around. You can't just leave
Yeah.
him there on that island.
Now, what about their tight end, who got hurt I'm talking about Cincinnati's tight end. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Azumaga or something like that. You know the
Yeah, I know who you're
he
talking about. I don't know how to pronounce it either, though.
yeah, but he got hurt early
Yeah,
in the championship game against Kansas City. And I read shortly, in a week or not a week or two, a day or two after the AFC Championship game that he might be able to play in the Super Bowl. Have you seen any update on that?
I think I saw maybe a couple hours ago. There's optimism that he'll play, but they're not sure. I don't think he practiced today. Today's Wednesday. Yeah, I don't think he practiced today, so they're still waiting to see how he progresses in the rehab. He's pretty confident that he's going to play. I think they interviewed him recently. He said, "Yeah, I'm doing everything I can to be out there. It's the last game. I have to be out there." But obviously, injuries are the ones that dictate whether you go out there or not. And a knee injury, especially the type he had, that they thought it was a tear, I think in the MCL, definitely something to be careful about. But if he's able to be out there and maybe be at 80%, that makes a big difference too for the Bengals offense.
I agree. I agree. I just wonder, yeah, he's going to want to play because it's the Super Bowl. But if he's out there, how effective can he be is going to be a real question. But I still like, the Rams. I think McVay is going to go into his bag, which is interesting because I thought against San Francisco, there was a part of me that thought when he kept challenging everything, there was a part of me that thought, and he was challenging, like he made a couple of challenges that were just dumb. It was like, yo,
Yeah,
that ball's on the ground. What are you doing? Right? You know what I mean? And he was challenging it. And I thought he was panicking a little bit. That was my thought. But maybe he wasn't, but he I think he is look, to me, he's the prototype of a lot of the young coaches that we now see, right?
mm,
He was the one. They hired him. He was the youngest coach in the NFL, and he came with all this energy. He came with this sort of new age approach to the game, you know, and it seems that once the Rams had their success with McVay, NFL is a copycat league,
yeah.
and other teams want to find the next McVay. So when we see all these young coaches on the sidelines now, it's because of McVay.
Yeah.
Right? And I just think McVay's been McVay longer than these McVay point twos have been McVay point twos, you know what I mean? And I think he's gonna have his team ready to go out there and really have a good game, and the players will respond. So I'm looking forward to it, man. 37-16, and we can come back and talk about all the details next week. Um, hey, listen, before we leave the NFL, just real quickly on Brian Flores, because one of the things that happened this week, um, Brian Flores, his lawsuit has been filed against the NFL and he also named the Giants, the Broncos, and the Dolphins in his suit. But at the time that he filed his lawsuit, he was still in the running for two jobs, including the head coaching job with the Houston Texans. That job went to Lovie Smith, someone who didn't appear to be a finalist or even be on the radar of the Texans. And Flores's lawyers have come out and said the only reason why he didn't get the job is because of the lawsuit. First of all, do you agree with that? Do you think that's the only reason why he didn't get that job? Or that's the main reason why he didn't get the job with the Texans?
I think it was definitely a factor, and I believe that the Lovey Smith hiring was a reaction to that. Um, I This is just my personal opinion. There's no, outside anything influencing this. I think the NFL may have had a hand in pushing the Texans to hire Lovey Smith because, like you said, he wasn't a candidate. Nobody's talking about him. Nobody's interviewing him that we know of. And all of a sudden, NFL redacts their not redacts, but comes out with a new statement regarding the Brian Flores lawsuit and all that stuff and their practices with diversity. And the next day, Lovey Smith is hired. So it was kind of funky timing the way everything happened. So I think the lawsuit did factor into the Texans' decision not to move forward with Flores, and it did factor into, I think, the hiring of Lovey Smith as well.
Yeah. And, I thought about this, Rob, from my own perspective. Look, I don't own an NFL team. I run a small business, right? But as a business owner, I'm thinking to myself, if I had a job candidate that I had under consideration to run my business or a key part of my business, and he or she had filed a lawsuit against the industry that I'm in,
Yeah,
right? And it's not against me, but it's in the industry, it's against other competitors and all the rest of it. And it's a blockbuster lawsuit. I might not hire that candidate either because I'm
yeah,
thinking I need you to be here running, my division, my company or whatever, and I need your 100% attention. I don't need you having your attention diverted by this very public lawsuit. I don't need you to be, having to, oh, I got to go I'm in depositions next week. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
don't need you telling me, trial date is set for such and such a time, or we're in settlement talks and all the rest of it. In short, I don't want the drama.
yeah,
Now, you know, I don't know if someone's going to say, well, because I'm thinking to myself, the Texans are going to be named in a lawsuit next by Flores' lawyers. That's what I believe.
yeah,
But, and I can understand why they would do that. I can understand why they would do that. But as I also can see some legitimate business reasons why someone might not hire Flores. You and I both said it, when this story first broke. We texted each other and said, he's done
yeah.
as far as getting head coaching jobs. And
And I
that's
think,
part of why everybody say he's so courageous. They're saying because look, people file lawsuits all the time. He's not courageous because he filed a lawsuit. His courage is coming because he's filed a lawsuit that essentially has ended his career as a head coach or a head coaching prospect in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think he knew that coming into this and filing the lawsuit, and I think he mentioned it as well in his interviews across um, different outlets and stuff like that, where he said, "I know what I'm risking here," and it's you're filing a lawsuit against Big Brother per se, So
Mhm.
yeah, it's gonna affect his employment. Um, will he get a coaching opportunity next year? We'll see. But yeah, I think going into this, I think he knew this. I think a lot of his peers knew this. I think the teams that were interviewing him must have known, like, I don't know if we can hire him right now. Like, I don't know if this is the good time to hire him. And it's not that he's not qualified for the job. He did a great job in Miami. Um, but like you said, there's a lot of stuff going on around him. To bring that into a team like the Texans, for example, that already have their share of drama going on and still have to figure out the Deshaun Watson stuff and all that stuff. They're a bad team. They were not good at all last year. They're basically rebuilding that whole culture. I don't know if that's the start you want to have with having Brian Flores come in as the head coach.
I totally agree, and I'm sure there are some that would disagree and say no. If you're not going to hire him because he filed the lawsuit, you're discriminating against him. And I get the argument. I don't agree with that argument. As I said, I think there could be legitimate business reasons why, as you just said, already have a mess on our hands with Deshaun Watson. Already have a mess on our hands by being a bad football team. I'm not going to now put gasoline on a fire by bringing in a guy who's really hot right now because
Yeah,
of this very public lawsuit, this blockbuster lawsuit against the NFL. Not going to do it. I need to bring some stability to my franchise and get us going in the right direction. I think that's a legitimate business reason, if you ask me. But, you know, his lawyers seem to be surprised by it. I'm thinking, what did you think?
I know.
You you think this lawsuit was going to make him the hot candidate of the hour? That teams would be clamoring for him? Come on now. And you know how I feel about his lawyers, so
Yeah.
so I don't so anyway, we'll see what happens as that continues to make its way through, but I would not be surprised if by Friday his lawyers go into court and amend their complaint to include the Houston Texans so that they can get some publicity leading into the Super Bowl. I'm telling you, I wouldn't be
Mm,
surprised.
yeah.
So we'll see. But on let's switch gears and go to the NBA because there's a lot going on there in terms of the NBA trade deadline, which is as we're speaking now, Wednesday. The trade deadline is tomorrow, February 10th. And there's been some moves, Tyrese Halliburton going from the Kings to the Pacers, Karis LeVert going from the Pacers to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I think we're still waiting perhaps for some big shoes to drop. And there's still some talk of James Harden going from the Nets to the Sixers in exchange for Ben Simmons. First of all, let me ask you this, Rob, as a basketball guy. If you're the Nets, do you make that trade? And then if and then answer it from the other side. If you're the Sixers, which seems to be the easier one because they right now have a player who's not playing. So maybe that's too easy. But if you're the Nets, you make that trade, Ben Simmons, you trade Harden in exchange for Simmons.
That's tough. And if you would have asked me this last year, maybe the decision is a little bit easier because both guys are playing. Um, but James Harden hasn't been James Harden. He's been hurt. He's having a hamstring issue now. You can kind of feel like there's a lot of mileage on him from maybe his time in Houston, where for a while he was basically by himself, and then he had Chris Paul and Westbrook and a bunch of other guys. But you feel like there's a lot of mileage on him. Ben Simmons, we have no idea what he is this year. Obviously, he's probably keeping himself in shape, keeping himself ready to go, all that stuff. But if I'm the Nets, I think I make the trade, and this is why. I think with Ben Simmons, obviously you lose offense because James Harden, he's averaging 20 something points a game. He can very quickly drop 35 on you out of the blue. He can get you a triple double, all that stuff. But I think you improve defensively with Ben Simmons, assuming he comes back the player he is. You improve defensively, and you get a guy out in James Harden, who, according to reports, doesn't want to be in Brooklyn. He's a free agent after this year, and seems like he's ready to test the market and see what's out there for him. And the most likely scenario if he stays is maybe a sign and trade, and you get something back for James Harden at the end of the season. But I think if you can get a caliber player, a Ben Simmons type player, and you get Ben Simmons back in this trade, I think that's a good trade for the Nets to make. On the other side, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you if you can get James Harden for Ben Simmons, if you're Philly, you do it because you'll get James Harden to play every single day as opposed to a no-show in Ben Simmons. So I would make the trade for both sides. I think it's a trade that you almost have to make because you won't get more value for those two players anywhere else.
For me, if I'm the Nets, I don't want Ben Simmons. I think he's too much of a risk. I don't know what Ben Simmons' makeup is because I thought that after his poor showing in the playoffs last year and the criticism that he received, some of it maybe a little bit over the top. I think Doc Rivers kind of threw him under the bus in his post game interview after the loss to the Hawks in the playoffs. But he did earn some of the criticism for his poor play. I thought after that Ben Simmons was going to spend the summer, work on his game, and come back and essentially say, "I'll show you." I thought he was going to do that. Instead, he responded by saying, "I'm never playing for you again. I'm going," announced that he was holding out. Then, says he has, mental health issues, and I'm not doubting that he does. But, for me, it disappointed me that he didn't sort of take this challenge on and say, "I'm going to come back next year and I'm going to show you guys that I'm a baller." He didn't do that. So for me right now, there's a question to me about his internal fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a question about internal fortitude, New York's not the place for you. That to me is a bad mix because if Ben Simmons comes to New York and he tries to fake the funk, New Yorkers are going to sniff him out in the proverbial New York minute. And if he thought Philadelphia was bad,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And that's what concerns me about Ben Simmons. So that's one thing. But the other thing, Rob, is this: Ben Simmons, if we assume that KD and Kyrie are going to still be with the Nets and still playing together, Ben Simmons is the third option. Ben Simmons is not going to have the ball in his hands like he did when he was in Philadelphia. It's just not. And so I wonder how he's going to play. How do you use him if he's not the guy with the ball in his hands?
Mm.
And he's not going to come over here and demand the ball from KD or
No.
from Kyrie. So what happens to him? Does he go into the corner? He can't do that because he can't shoot 3 pointers. So where's he going to be doing when he doesn't have the ball in his hands? And what kind of threat is he if he doesn't even have an outside jump shot? So I don't to me, I'm wondering how does he even fit in as a basketball player, putting aside the internal, whether he has the fortitude or not. But is it a right talent mix for the Nets? And I'm not sure it is, given that you have two ball dominant guys and two true alpha males in KD and Kyrie. I just wonder from a basketball perspective, is Ben Simmons a good fit on that team?
Honestly, I don't think he's a fit basketball perspective, like what you're saying. In a basketball view, I don't see where he fits unless you kind of have to take the ball away from Kyrie when Kyrie's there playing. And that's not something that I would personally do if I'm Steve Nash as a coach, because you want Kyrie with the ball in his hand at the top of the key and driving. And that's what Kyrie does best. He's one of the best finishers I think I've ever seen at the basket. So I don't think you want to take him off the ball. Can he play off the ball? Of course. Yeah, he can shoot. He can cut. He can do whatever. Um, but I think if what you want to hope for is that Ben Simmons has developed some type of jump shot outside of the paint, and that's kind of where it would work. But again, we haven't seen that from Ben Simmons in his career yet. So to kind of expect that all of a sudden would be foolish, I think. So I agree with you on that perspective. In a basketball sense, they would have to figure something out of how Ben Simmons is going to fit. But in terms of just outside of
Yeah,
basketball
I was
perspective, that's why I think that you have to make the trade just because of value you'll get back.
yeah, I understand the value part of it. Um, I just I just don't see it working as from an X's and O's, and it just we're out here playing and trying to win games. And because I think Ben Simmons, part of his talent is that he truly is a 6'10" point guard with the wingspan of a condor, you know what I mean? And he can play the defense and everything else. And I think that's his strength. But if you take the ball out of his hands for a guy who is otherwise offensively limited, I don't know what he does for you on the court. And that's and that's the concern I have. And, if the Nets make the trade, is Ben Simmons ready to play?
Mm.
Is he mentally ready to play? Is he physically ready to play? I would tend to think physically he probably isn't, right? He doesn't even show up anywhere around the Sixers, right?
Not yeah. I
So
think
I
he
don't
just
I don't
shows
even
up
know if
and
he's
leaves.
ready to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, Rob. I think I would take a pass on Ben Simmons if I'm the Nets. I just don't think New York is a good fit for him, and I don't believe the Nets are a fit for him. But because I'm a Knicks fan, go ahead, Brooklyn Nets, go ahead and trade for him. I don't think it's gonna work. I don't think it's gonna work for you. So go ahead and do it. I'm I'm rooting for you to do it. But if I take a step back, I could say I don't think that's going to work. But go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Speaking about the Knicks, what do you think the Knicks should do, man? I mean,
Oh man.
man, the Knicks last year, they captured the city again, right? I mean, they made the playoffs, they captured the city. It's isn't it amazing that Bing Bong seems like 3 years ago, right? This year when they were 5-1 and everybody was bing bonging all over the city. And right now, man, they are playing such bad basketball. Julius Randle is slapping computers and, and doing all kinds of stuff, man. Rob, what's going on, man? What's going on with our Knicks, man?
I don't know, man. The Knicks do this to us all the time. They give us a little bit of hope one year and then rip our hearts out the next. When we think, man, we're gonna get better. We just got a couple new guys into the mix. Yeah, we're gonna make a run. We made the playoffs last year. Now we're gonna go for the championship. I'm out here talking to my friends. Yeah, New York Knicks keep the lights on. Nets who? And then this happens. So here we are.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I don't know what kind of trades they have to make, if they're gonna make any trades. I'm not optimistic about the season if they even make the playoffs. I don't know, man. They need something different.
They do, man. And I look, I thought the Knicks played over their heads last year, and I thought that their biggest talent last year was the ability to play hard and not quit. And that was something that was really endearing, right? Again, you're talking New York, and New York doesn't mind if you lose, but you're going out there and you bringing it, right? And the Knicks were bringing it last year, and that was one of their better qualities. And this year, with pretty much the same team, even though they brought in Kimber Walker, who's been a real disappointment, and
Mhm.
Eric Fournier, who I never really liked him anyway, because to me, he's a complimentary piece at best.
I
And
agree.
I think he's the kind of guy who does start on the Orlando Magic. You know what I'm saying? But he shouldn't be starting on the New York Knicks. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not, you start for Sacramento, you can start for Orlando Magic. There's certain teams around the league you can start for, but he's not a starting point guard, really. I think you know, he's a bench player, really.
Yeah.
So I wasn't excited about his signing, but right now the Knicks are talking about potentially trading Kemba, uh, potentially trading Fournier, and even Julius Randle. Do you think the Knicks should entertain a trade for Randle?
Honestly, I wouldn't mind them entertaining a trade. It's crazy to think that they're entertaining a trade considering the kind of player, the kind of season he had last year, which I think you and I spoke about it. I don't know if it was a couple weeks ago where we kind of realized, wait a minute, last year was this crazy year for him, but this year seems like a disappointment, right? But when you look at his stats and stuff like that, it's kind of who Julius Randle is. So I wouldn't mind them looking out there. I don't know how high his trade value is, considering the struggles he's had this year, attitude wise and stuff like that. I don't know if I would pull the trigger on a trade though, unless it's something where you can look forward to next year that'll really make an impact for next year. Because I don't think you're going to get anything back. You shouldn't get anything back that's temporary just for this year.
I think about teams that are playoff contenders or playoff teams, and teams that believe that they have a chance to compete for the NBA championship. And if I'm one of those teams, I don't know if I think Julius Randle gets me over the top.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, because if I'm one of those teams already, my starting five is probably pretty good. Um, and do I bring in a Julius Randle, a guy who's a volume guy? He needs the ball. He needs to play to be most effective. And one of the things that's been, I think, a red flag for the Knicks and probably for teams around the league has been what I view as some immaturity on Julius Randle's part. I
Mm.
think the thumbs down thing was a sign of immaturity, or was an immature act at least. I think that him the other day against the Lakers, where the assistant coach was trying to show him something on the laptop during a timeout, and Julius Randle attacked the computer. I think that was a sign of immaturity. And quite frankly, Rob, I think some of his sulking and his bad body language seems to coincide with the emergence of RJ Barrett, and Barrett not being as deferential on the court and maybe being a bit more assertive and playing well.
Yeah.
And Julius Randle last year was the undisputed alpha dog of the Knicks. And I think right now you have, RJ Barrett kind of, showing himself to be a contender to the throne, so to speak, right? And I think Julius doesn't quite like that, and he's kind of sulking around. And so if I'm another team, those types of things don't attract me to what is already, in my opinion, a limited player, right?
Yeah.
A player with some limitations. He has some good qualities, but I don't know if I'm contending for a postseason spot, or I believe I have championship aspirations as an organization, that I'm going out and acquiring Julius Randle.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's a, you know, oh, we just got Julius Randle. Yeah, now we got this. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
you're right on the money with that. He's more of a complementary piece. And I think we said this too with the Knicks. You know, if he's going to be the Knicks number one, then they're not playing for a championship because they need somebody to be that number one, where maybe Julius
right.
Randle can slide back to the number two. And maybe that's when the Knicks kind of take that next step forward. But I 100% agree with you. He's not a difference maker per se on a team.
No. But you know who I think has shown himself to be a difference maker on the Knicks, and he's done it by his absence, is Derrick Rose.
Hmm.
I believe that a lot of their struggles is tied to the absence of Derrick Rose.
Yeah,
You know, Derrick Rose is a pro, he's a vet, and he's a glue guy for that team in particular. And they've missed him terribly.
I
And
100% agree with that. Yep.
yeah, so I think that's been something that's been, um, a big void for the Knicks. Hey, listen, real quick, man. Lastly, on the NBA, can we get to the point right now where we say the Lakers are in trouble? I think the
Oof.
Lakers need to make a deal, and I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know if I don't see anyone taking on Russell Westbrook. I really don't.
No.
I think Russell Westbrook has gotten blistered, maybe a bit unfairly, but he hasn't played well. But the Lakers right now, bro. Look, fine. You beat the Knicks in overtime. Think about that. It took
Yeah.
overtime to beat the Knicks. It took an extra period to beat the Knicks. So just think about that. and then and then you get blasted by Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And LeBron James says we're not on that level. And I'm thinking, wow, what a news flash. The Lakers, I'm tired of talking about them. I'm tired of hearing about them. The Lakers, look, either you play better or you go home. And I'm tired of hearing about it. Now, of course, it will continue because LeBron is there and, you got these big personalities. But, Rob, the Lakers are a bad team.
They
They
are.
just are.
They are. And you can say anything you want about injuries and this and whatever, but they were just from the beginning, and we spoke about this too, a poorly constructed roster. Westbrook was never going to work there. It wasn't going to be a fit. Um, yeah, he's played bad. He can't make a shot. You know, you can kind of tell even by just the way he plays. He's not himself. But we knew that going into the season that he wasn't going to be able to be himself on this team with that roster. And I don't know how the Lakers front office didn't see that. I don't know how LeBron didn't see that. Who sees everything? The guy's a player GM. But we knew it wasn't going to work out, and this is the result of it.
And it's funny, and that's how I see Ben Simmons in New York.
Mm,
To me, it's kind of the same thing. It just doesn't fit. The blend of talent, instead of it blending, or the mixture of talent, instead of it blending, it kind of clashes, right?
yeah,
Because Russ is a guy who needs the ball in his hands. Russ needs to be able to put up 27 shots in order to get his 27 points, you know what I mean? He's that kind of a guy, you know what I mean? And, and he needs the ball in his hands constantly, and we knew it, right? And wait a minute, LeBron's gonna have the ball in his hands, and then AD's gonna have to get his share of shots and so forth, and that's the kind of the danger I see with the Nets getting. Ben Simmons. And the last thing I would just going back to the Nets real quickly before we get out of here is I still think it's too bad that we haven't really seen KD, James Harden, and Kyrie play together for a sustained period of time.
Yeah, one of the
Because I
biggest what ifs I think in
yeah,
maybe NBA history.
yeah, yeah. And as much as I don't like the Nets, yeah, I want to see what that would look like because in the brief glimpse that we've had of it, it looked pretty darn good.
Yeah,
You know what I
it is
mean? It really
special.
did. Yeah, it really did. And it'd be too bad if that never really came to fruition. And it does seem like it's short lived for so many reasons. You know, the injuries to KD, the vaccination issue with Kyrie, and then, James has had his share of injuries and now he may be on his way out of town. So, anyway, well, we're on our way up on out of here. But we're going to come back next week. At that point, we'll see who is the new Super Bowl champion. And listen, man, I think if you, if my 37-16 comes to fruition, I don't care that you picked more games correctly than me. I will be the champion. Because if I pick the game right on the nose, that has to be worth some extra points right there.
Uh, we'll see. We'll have to bring that to the committee.
Yeah. Here I am. I'm just coming off a suspension and I'm already trying to change the rules. But listen, man, enjoy the Super Bowl. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Let's see what happens over the next 24 hours with the NBA trade deadline. That may bring another trade or two, but the Super Bowl is the big story coming up, and looking forward to that and the halftime show. And then, of course, looking forward to coming back next week and doing it all over again. But until then, man, you have a good one. All right.
Thank you, brother. You too.
Okay.